So a big thing I've been seeing around Dune Awakening is a lot of people in videos and forum posts and Reddit posts have been saying that if you're not ready to join like a big clan or a big guild, that you're just going to get destroyed in Dune Awakening like you could in something like Ark Survival Evolved. And I've already made a video going over a lot of this information. I think that is completely the opposite of Dune Awakening. I think you will be able to do quite a lot of the content in Dune Awakening fully PvE. You'll be able to have a base that pretty much can't be raided or destroyed. That's permanent as long as you play like once every 20 days at least. You'll still be able to get all of the resources, all of the schematics, all the weapons, all of that type of stuff from the endgame PvP zone of the Deep Desert because there is a player market where players can pretty much sell everything to each other. So pretty much everything in Dune Awakening will in some way be able to be accomplished by fully PvE focused players. So that's the main thing I want to go over in this video. If you're a player that does not want to do any PvP at all, you still should be completely fine in Dune Awakening to do a vast majority of the content and still obtain pretty much all the resources and items that anybody else can obtain. Now, if you're somebody new that's been looking around to see if you'll be able to actually do a lot of stuff specifically as a PvE player for Dune Awakening, and you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I can go over a quick explanation of progressing throughout all of the different areas of Dune Awakening. So in Dune Awakening, when you start, you're going to choose an overarching world. This is basically just choosing a server or a realm of another MMO. You create your character, you get in, you'll be in a 10 to 15 minute solo scenario. After you get done with that, it'll just be some small tutorial stuff. After that, it'll spit you out in what's essentially a starter zone. In the first big zone you'll be in Dune Awakening called Haga Basin, there'll be like around 50 players on every Haga Basin, and there'll be a bunch of different Haga Basins that you can choose between. You'll be able to see where guild members are or where your friends are if you want to play in the same Haga Basin with them. Haga Basin is like 90% PvE and like 5 or 10% PvP, and the only PvP areas are pretty much these crashed ships that then have a PvP zone around them. So you don't even have to go to that if you don't want to. It's kind of more event focused, but everything else is PvE, and Haga Basin is not wiped or anything, so you can build your permanent bases here. And if you have a shield generator protecting your base, which you can fill up for 20 days at a time, your base will pretty much not be able to be destroyed by anything. No other players will be able to come raid you. You won't get destroyed by like sandstorms or sandworms won't be able to come eat your base. You'll pretty much be good. This will be a permanent PvE base location. And on top of all of that, Haga Basin is the size of their previous game, Conan Exiles. It's a pretty massive map. So there's also not going to be like some massive clans that are just able to take over everything with base locations. There'll obviously be some really good base locations that will probably be taken, but there won't be enough people on a Haga Basin server to be able to have these big clans like consistently just control all of the areas. It's just really not going to work like that. And those big clans are going to be more focused on the Deep Desert anyway. So they're not going to be super focused on trying to just grief everybody or control everything in the PvE area where they can't even control everything anyway. And the developers are saying Haga Basin is going to have around 100 hours of content because it is such a massive map. And that doesn't really include just doing a bunch of additional farming or farming for more recipes, farming dungeons, doing all of that type of stuff that gives a ridiculous amount of playtime for other survival games. Like if you're somebody that's played like Conan Exiles or Ark Survival Evolved, how many hours did you put in just farming metal or something to try to build up your base or try to craft more items or anything like that, or try to craft a new saddle for a new dinosaur? It's going to be the same way in Dune Awakening. You're going to have so many resources and things to go just obtain that Haga Basin, the PvE focus zone, is just going to give you a ridiculous amount of playtime. Then once you craft your first flying vehicle, the Ornithopter, you can fly to the other zones. There's 2 social hubs, which are just the 2 cities of the different factions. You'll be able to go there for quests, for objectives, to see other players because it'll be a social hub. You'll be able to see like 100 plus other players there. And then you'll also be able to visit the player market and a bunch of other NPC vendors and things like that. You'll be able to go to those early by paying certain NPCs, but your Ornithopter will allow you to go there anytime you want. Then the Ornithopter can also take you to the last zone called the Deep Desert. The Deep Desert is massive. It's like 9 times the size of Conan Exiles or somewhere around there. It's a massive zone that doesn't have any instancing or sharding. So if you and one other player on your overarching world are at the same area, you will always see them. You're never getting split up, but the Deep Desert is split into 9 different meshed zones. That basically just means that they're on different servers. They have their own separate player caps, but you could freely freely travel between them. And if one zone gets capped on amount of players there, they have multiple different ways to try to push players out, like sandstorms, like roadblocks, or just not allowing you to enter that zone until someone else is left. There'll be able to be 100 plus players in each one of those zones, so it'll be a massive open world PvP. Everything will be PvP except the starting PvE strip. So if you really don't want to go to anything PvP, you could just stay out of the deep desert, but it's so massive that if you're fine with being in the PvP area and just trying to skirt around PvP, you can do that pretty well because it's so massive. It'll be hard for people to just hunt other players down super effectively. And a really big element of the deep desert is that a storm comes through and wipes it. This means that any buildings players place in the deep desert gets wiped every week. That means you don't have any permanent bases there. So you will be able to raid each other, fight each other, but permanent bases that basically can't be raided will be in Haga Basin. So if that's something you're really scared of being in like Ark Survival Evolved or something like that, and your base just getting offline raided, you really don't have to worry about that because your main base in Haga Basin will pretty much always be there if you keep the shield generator on, and that probably won't be too difficult. So if you're primarily worried about kind of the base raiding aspect of PvP, you don't have to worry about that much. So you could go do PvP in the deep desert and just kind of have it be more player versus player PvP instead of trying to raid your base and destroy all of your foundation. Now you will be able to build there still. It'll get wiped in a week anyway, so those are more kind of like building bunkers or buildings to try to defend an area for that week. The Coriolis Storm will also change up points of interest, dungeons, where resources are, and that changing of the actual map will help PvE players as well, because every new week, nobody knows where anything is. You as a PvE player and a smart PvE player could get in there and go to some of the really good new resource spots if you find them early and get a bunch of really good resources before a lot of the bigger PvP groups find where everything actually is. And even later in the week, when everybody knows where all the good locations are, you can go to the worst locations, still be able to get resources and do dungeons and all that type of stuff, and there'll be a lot less of a chance that the big PvP groups are actually in those locations because they will just be at the more lucrative areas. And before I get any further into the video, also understand the Dune Awakening does not have full loot PvP, at least a majority of the time. That includes just dying to pretty much anything in the game. The only thing at a baseline in Dune Awakening that will remove you of everything you're wearing is dying to a sandworm. If you die to a sandworm, everything's lost. But if you go die to an AI in Haga Basin, only like resources and things like that are dropped. Your gear and everything isn't dropped. If you go to the deep desert and another player kills you, normally your resources drop, all of your gear and stuff doesn't drop to them. Now, as a potential limited time rule, there will be the possibility of like 1 week the deep desert being full loot PvP, and that's tied into another one of the endgame systems called the Lancerad, which is basically a bingo board. The two factions fight over objectives. They get an objective first, they get a piece on the bingo board. If you get bingo, that faction wins the Lancerad for the week and gets to choose kind of a server rule that could be full loot PvP in the deep desert, or just like a crafting cost reduction for your total faction, or any other number of buffs. Those are pretty much the only two the developers have actually told us about. But the Lancerad is also very much available to PvE players because it's primarily just focused on giving you objectives and content to go do for that week. So maybe 1 week, this NPC wants you to give him 100 ornithopters, and if you do that first, your faction gets a piece on the bingo board. You don't have to go to the deep desert or do any PvP to do that. You could be a PvE focused player, stay in Haga Basin, craft tons of ornithopters, send them over to that NPC, and you could win a piece of the Lancerad board that week for your overarching faction just by being a PvE player. But I think the biggest thing that allows you to be a fully PvE focused player and just stay in Haga Basin is the player market. There will be what's essentially a player auction house that you can buy and sell things to other players. So if you just want to sit in Haga Basin, you don't want to do any PvP, you can just farm up resources. You could try to make cool bases and blueprint them and sell those. You could try to get unique schematics from any of the dungeons or more rare opulent chests and try to sell those recipes or craft those recipes and sell those items to players. You could try to make a bunch of the base items that bigger PvP guilds will want a lot of, maybe like healing supplies or ammo for certain weapons or modules for vehicles or even base vehicles. You could do all of that in Haga Basin, go sell it to other players on the market, and then those PvP players that go to the deep desert will also be selling maybe resources they get from the deep desert if there's specific ones. They'll be selling the unique items that they could craft from unique schematics. They'll be selling the unique schematics, anything you can get in the deep desert, players will be selling on the market. Now, they'll generally be able to make like much more currency or just build up how much wealth they have in game, but you as a PvE player can still earn all of the same things, just generally at a slower rate. And I'm not even sure if that's actually true, because we already know there's going to be a bunch of the unique schematics and things in Haga Basin, and unique schematics can only be crafted once before they just get destroyed. So you could farm up a really good weapon that comes from a unique schematic in Haga Basin that everybody wants for PvP, and you could potentially be making a lot more than the PvP players would be making just because you smartly farmed up what players wanted as a fully PvE focused player. And all of this goes for being in a big guild or being a solo player. So being a solo player in the deep desert is always going to be much harder. So you're probably going to be more PvE focused, which, as we've gone over in this video, is something you're absolutely able to do. And what's something really nice that the developers are doing is to join in on the Lancerad every week. You have to be part of a faction. You do have to join a clan or a guild or a house, whatever they're specifically calling it. You do have to join one of those to join the Lancerad. You can just make one and be the only person in it and still be able to join the Lancerad. So pretty much everything is able to be done as a solo player and as a PvE focused player. And that's one of the main things I wanted to reiterate in this video and why I wanted to go over this subject again, because I've seen so many people essentially trying to scare players away from Dune Awakening, saying you're going to fail in Dune Awakening or something, or you're not ready for it. Realistically, Dune Awakening is seeming to actually be a bit less hardcore than something like PvP on Conan Exiles, something like PvP on Ark Survival Evolved, because those games, you die, you lose everything on you, and you can get raided in the middle of the night and have your base destroyed and come back and they destroyed every foundation and there's literally nothing left. In Dune Awakening, you can have an essentially permanent base in Haga Basin that people cannot raid. You don't lose everything when you die, whether it's in PvE or to other players. So the game is actually going to be more friendly to solo players and PvE focused players, and is going to be a bit less hardcore than other survival games, but it's also going to have a lot of those MMO aspects to, I think, make up for it being a bit less hardcore. So there's going to be more quest lines to follow. There's going to be that full auction house. So as a PvE player, don't be scared of Dune Awakening. You are definitely going to be able to partake in the vast majority of the game, and you're not going to be getting raided every night like you would in other survival games. But that's all I want to go over. So thanks for watching.